Greetings, everybody. Larry Williams, the director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis in the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. It is October 28th of 2025, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the CARMA Quick Chat. In case you're new to CARMA, let me make sure you know that we are a nonprofit academic center located within the Rawls College of Business, and our mission is to provide research methods education for faculty and students in different areas of the organizational and social sciences. We have different types of events that we host, including webcast lectures, panel sessions, workshops, and we're also known for doing short courses. We've been doing all this stuff for nearly 30 years, and I'll give a plug. We've got a new set of short courses scheduled for January 5th to 8th. You can find information about those courses and everything that we do at karmaeu.com. So today, our purpose with our quick chat is to allow us to introduce somebody that's going to be given a presentation as part of CARMA. And today's quick chat partner will be giving a webcast lecture in a little over 2 weeks on November the 14th, starting at 9 a.m. time in the U.S., and I will allow him to tell more about that lecture that he's going to give for us towards the end of our chat. So with that as background, it's my pleasure to welcome Anand van Zelderen. He is an assistant professor of artificial intelligence and business at the Schema Business School. His interest grabbed me when I first read about him, focusing on employee interaction with autonomous AI agents. He's among the first to develop synthetic field studies, and as part of his passion for this area, has founded the Openverse Open Science Initiative, an interdisciplinary collaboration of scholars around the world. And we're going to learn a little about most of those things during this chat. So, Anand, welcome to CARMA. We appreciate you making the commitment to give a webcast lecture in a couple of weeks, and really appreciate you taking the time to chat. So it's glad to have you involved with CARMA.
Thank you for having me, Larry. It's a real honor.
So I noticed that you have a little bit different background than a lot of people that end up for CARMA, in the sense that you have a PhD in economics. And so what led you to get a PhD in economics, and what were your research interests at that time that led you to think that's what I want to do?
Well, to be fair, it is officially, PhD in business economics, but it's not that wildly different from what might have been more general business administration or management or even organizational psychology PhD. So, I mean, I have a background in organizational psychology. So that was my master's that I did at Leiden University in the Netherlands. And I wanted to pursue a PhD because I was very much intrigued by my research project during my master's, in which I had the opportunity to work with various organizations, and I felt that I made a real impact there. So I wanted to pursue a PhD, and I ended up in Belgium at the KU Leuven with Nicky Dries as my promoter. But frankly, we did heavily psychology oriented research. My focus was also on talent management and HR practice. Don't want to talk about that too much today, obviously, but it wasn't that strange. What is worth mentioning, though, is that during the PhD, I had the first opportunity to do some work with virtual reality. I've always been had an affinity and a passion for new technologies, and when I learned that for my PhD, I had to do vignette studies, like these written text scenarios. I read the 2 articles that were offered by Herman and Guinness, and I quickly learned that there was this idea that, there's some concerns about the validity, specifically the ecological validity of these kinds of vignette studies, and that we should consider using virtual reality. So I was fortunate enough that Nikki Dries was very supportive of my maybe overly ambitious goal to start doing some virtual reality research, despite it being, very much a niche in our field.
Yeah, yeah. So then you to perceive a postdoc at the University of Zurich. And so how did that happen? Did you do, what was the main thing you got out of your time there?
So investing a lot of time and energy into a niche is a risk. In my case, it really paid off because at the University of Zurich at the time, they had received a lot of funding to build a virtual reality lab for management and organizational behavior research. So when they got the funding, they had to find actually somebody to manage and build the lab. And that was in 2021, 2022. And I can assure you at the time, it probably still is, it's very difficult to find people that fit that criteria. So in fact, there was just me and one other person who fit the criteria. And I was fortunate enough that the other person, a close friend and a colleague of mine with who I've now published stuff, Theodore Masterswagen, didn't want to take the position. So he basically presented to me on a silver platter.
Well, that sounds like a great opportunity to really be involved kind of from the very beginning in that. So now you've moved on to schema. And when
Correct.
exactly during all of that period did your interest in employee interactions with autonomous AI agents begin? And can you describe those interests? And of course, I'm particularly interested because I have had my own emotional reaction as I've dealt with autonomous AI agents. So,
Hmm. So, very briefly after starting my postdoc at Zurich, the ChatGPT took the world by storm. And of course, as I just mentioned, I've always been passionate for new emerging technologies. So I was a very, very early adopter of it. Um, and the way it started is perhaps a little funny. So when it first came, people thought like, oh, it's just going to be a fad. It's like the metaverse, it's going to get some attention for a year, that nobody's going to care about it. And people are also saying, this tool isn't really that good. It doesn't perform to our expectations. It'll take years before it's something noteworthy. But I was there at the start, and I kind of wanted to challenge, my colleagues specifically on that idea. So um, um, what I did after our Christmas party, and again, this was only after I started working there for literally like a month. At our Christmas party, I I felt inspired to make a reasonable prompt for ChatGPT to say how loving it I felt being invited here to have this Christmas dinner with them, and to, that I looked forward to working with my colleagues. And I put it into ChatGPT. It created this nice little poem out of it as well. It was very, because these days you might have think it was authentic, but at the time it felt like something real and something impressive. And I shared that with my colleagues without disclosing that I used ChatGPT, and they were like, "Oh my God, it was so lovely, and I can't believe that you're so creative, yada yada yada." It had an impact on my consciousness. I started feeling guilty. I was like, how am I ever going to confess that I used ChatGPT for this? I did at some point. It took me a while to build up the courage. But then I realized, okay, what if people actually start using this at work? And what if they're starting to succeed with different kinds of projects, product innovation challenges, you name it, or just, could be even emails or whatever. If you're actively using this and you're not disclosing it,
yeah.
how's that going to make people feel? Because I felt terrible. So that basically got me started to do extensive research into the notions of psychological ownership in the workplace, and um, as well as the experiences of pride, appreciation that people get when working with or without AI in the workplace. So I've been doing research on that now for, well, what is it now? Nearly 3 years.
Uh-huh.
And we have some cool works that are currently being considered for publication. I've also integrated virtual reality into the mix, obviously, because I was running a VR lab. So we have interactive avatars that are AR powered that people can interact with and can be customized. And I'll talk about that more later for the appropriate question, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um,
And so
but
when you bring it all together like that, is then that what a synthetic field study is?
Exactly. That is what I'm trying to introduce to the world. I'm getting people hyped up to start making their own advanced simulations, because I feel like both like virtual reality has its purposes, but when we bring AI into the mix, we really start to be able to simulate very advanced kind of not just environments, but also social interactions, entire complicated leadership dynamics, or maybe collaborations with toxic coworkers or coaching of students, you name it. Anything, any social situation that you can imagine is with these technologies very, yeah, replicable and also controllable, which is nice. If you're doing, a field study or something, you lose the control over how people are interacting. It might be difficult to uh, record every single interaction, every word that was said, but um, when you simulate them and you have people in a controlled environment, you can account for all of these
Well, I imagine,
potentially confounding variables.
yeah. Well, I imagine it creates a certain degree of realism hard to capture in other ways. I'll let you talk about that a little bit later. So I mentioned the Open Verse Open Science Initiative. So how did that come about, and what types of things are you doing with that initiative?
Right. So how it came about, I'll try to keep it short. But when I was hired for my postdoc at the University of Zurich, the directive was sort of to build a metaverse lab and to do stuff with the metaverse. Again, at that time, that was still um, at least fairly trending. It was something that you would often read about in newspapers and tabloids. People were publishing about it as well. But I never really liked the term metaverse. From the start, it concerned me that a company was trying to basically take ownership of this international digital network and or place of, interaction and um, growth. But if we think back how the internet came to be, that was created by scholars at the time. It was funded by government initiatives, and it was meant to bring people together through these open protocols. Everybody should have been able to use the internet. We have HTTP now for a reason, and whether you have an Android or an Apple phone, like it doesn't influence how you're connected to the internet, right? We can always interact with each other. And at the time, companies were like, "Oh, we don't want to deal with the internet. Why would strangers want to talk to each other?" And that's literally what they said. So, but now we're seeing something. We saw something very different with the metaverse. We saw basically trying to monopolize this technology and this network. And I never really felt like that could thrive. We also saw some iterations of Mark Zuckerberg's vision for the metaverse, these horizon worlds with these uncomfortable avatars without legs. It never got to me. So I was like, I want to do something else. I want to think about what made the internet succeed, and let's try. It's extremely ambitious. I never thought it would actually get somewhere, but here we are. Let's apply these kinds of principles to the metaverse. So with some friends, we sat down and discussed it, came up with the name Openverse, and be like, okay, we want to try and make sure that everybody who's creating, at least, to keep the scope reasonable for research and for education, these virtual environments, everybody who's creating that, let's try and ensure that we're all speaking the same language. And, we can talk about coding language, but also in terms of how you report on these things and the processes that are in place to run these kinds of simulations and virtual reality experiences. Let's make sure we're all on the same page, because we aren't. It's the Wild West. It still is to this day. Like studies that have been conducted, for instance, 10 years ago, we're just going to have to assume that these findings are correct. There's no single way we could replicate these kinds of studies. The technology evolves, and especially in terms of VR, it evolves very quickly. And one system might not be able to read an application that was created a few years ago. So we need better protocols, and that's what we as a community have set out to do, and I would say are fairly successful in. We currently do have a paper that is being considered for publication to bring these protocols out to the masses. We're an interdisciplinary network of virtual reality and AI scholars. We're currently at, I think, 60 or 70 members currently of roughly 40 different institutions across at least 15 different countries. And as I said, we're interdisciplinary. So there's several management scholars, we have psychologists, we have even some ethicists, informatics people, engineering, and a couple others. Healthcare, of course, also in there. So very interdisciplinary to try and find some common ground, as we call it, virtual common ground,
Mhm.
to think about if we are running such a simulation, how do we store the assets that we're using, like the virtual environment. We created a virtual office for our research, for instance. So, and we had some office workers in there, like avatars, and those tools and that simulation we provide for everyone to use,
Uh-huh.
which then, is good for open science efforts in terms of replicability. And anybody with a headset can take that simulation, run their simulation again with a different sample in a different country, see if the results still hold. It's good for replicability on the one hand. On the second hand, um, they're also customizable. Like if you want to run a study with slightly different avatars or in a different environment, or you just want to customize our avatars differently in terms of how they behave and interact. Again, we did a study with co-workers, but if you want to turn them into leaders, for instance, it is just a matter of a few uh, different lines of instructions. You don't need to have any technical experience, and you don't need to invest thousands, tens, or even hundreds of thousands of euros into this technology to start doing these simulations as well. So our community is all about bringing all these different kinds of tools, assets, and expertise together to collaboratively propel this kind of research forward, because we collectively really believe in the value thereof, and we think it's also good for science if we are working together on this endeavor, and not, if we get a lot of funding, not just relying on proprietary tools or very expensive applications and just keeping them for ourselves. Science doesn't work if you're keeping for yourselves. Imagine if you make a really good measurement scale or something, right? And like, oh, nobody else can use my job satisfaction scale unless maybe you pay me like thousands of euros. I mean, that'd be crazy, right? But that's the world of VR so far. Um, yeah, sorry, I think I answered your question very
That's
taking a lot of time.
it's your time. We're delighted to learn more about what it is that you're doing, and I applaud kind of your long-term goals are. I am want to get a preview of your upcoming webcast lecture, but if you will, just couldn't help. I've asked this other question about, given your experience and perspectives and your particular view of the world. I mean, there's obviously a lot of technology changes that are going on related to work and organizations. And so if you have thoughts about, what excites you the most about all of the potential of that, and what scares you the most about work as we know it and how work as we know it is changing as technology continues to develop? I know it's a big
A
question.
very big question. It's I'm tempted to start with what scares me the most because that's what most of my research has been focusing on. I started very passionately with ChatGPT, thought it was going to make our lives better. But the more research I do, the more research that comes out also on this topic, the more concerned I'm getting. We also see how vastly it has developed, how advanced these tools are. So what we are seeing in the long run, when it comes to AI specifically, um, is that people might be more efficient, and that's like the goal of why big tech is investing into AI, and why consultant companies are trying to get helping companies succeed with AI. It's all about productivity, efficiency, getting more work done in less time, meaning that people can just be more productive despite still working the same amount of time. And ironically, this means that, the tool that could be one of the best solutions to burnout ends up being the one of the greatest antecedents of burnout,
Mhm.
because people are doing more work, are cognitively more um, busy with various kinds of tasks, end up doing more cognitively demanding stuff because a lot of the more easier tasks end up being automated. And we're just, yeah, seeing people getting burned out over the long run. We also know from various studies that loneliness is increasing in the workplace because people are not working with colleagues as much anymore to think up ideas, do brainstorming, or if they run into some issues, you know, it's easier to ask ChatGPT to help you with something than it is to find a coworker that's available. So loneliness is going up. We know that both burnout and loneliness can be linked to substance abuse and alcoholism. So um, there's this study from David Kramer which shows that it's worrisome. And I have students come to me frequently like, oh, where's AI going? Do I still have a job in the future? And for a time, I even said it myself, but I believe less and less in it. For a time, we used to say like, oh, you're not um, being replaced by AI, but you're going to be replaced by the person that knows how to use AI better than you. You hear it a lot, and this might be true. I'm not saying and of course, I would also not say that students shouldn't learn how to use AI, and I do teach that. Um, but the amount of roles that we do increasingly see replaced, and how advanced it is, and how excited some people are about these autonomous AI agents that essentially could run entire organizational structures on their own, I think are a bit worrisome developments, and we need to probably slow down developments a little bit and think about and reassess if this technology and the way we are proceeding, if it makes us better as human beings. How does, this can this really enhance our well-being? Can we function as a society? Um, Remove a lot of these, yeah, structures in place that we've relied on for decades, centuries even. Um, I think, yeah, I'm a bit scared that things are going too fast, but I'm also not here going to say that I know where it's heading, right? I think we just should slow it down. What am I excited about then? Um, Obviously, I mean, I am an AI scholar. I develop AI models myself. I love doing research with them. I'm promoting these tools, so of course I'm excited for it as well. Um, I think about the benefits and potential for research a lot, but in the field of work, um, the potential obviously is there. Again, I mentioned it that this could be the best tool to diminish our burnout in the workplace. I think we need to transition a little bit more to a different way of thinking about AI, not just as a tool that makes us more productive, but to think about it more as an entity that can be introduced in the workplace, which can that we collaborate with.
Mhm.
Essentially, this we've had several discussions also at AOM as part of like with panels and such. We've had several discussions on should we think about AI as just a tool, or is it potentially more? Now, there is some risks, of course, and again, I don't have a clear answer here because it's these discussions are still ongoing, but there is these discussions that um, if we position AI more as a coworker and we think of it more as something, that we socially interact with, that are the human AI dynamics tend to improve because um, it's not being created just to be a tool. It's mimicking humans. It's taking on organizational roles. It has all the parameters in place to for us make it feel like something human-like. So if we're just going to position it as some tool that organizations use, I think that we're falling short on its potential, but it might also just create this conflict between human experience and between what business policies wants and how people are designing them as well. So if we start thinking about as something more human and we start applying these kinds of human-like elements to these AI entities, like I'm also doing in my research, um, we can create better dynamics. We not just in terms of like the trust levels increase, but also in the way we feel ourselves when we're succeeding in the workplace. Like, for instance, in one of our studies, we show that people experience greater satisfaction in the workplace um, when they felt that they collaborated with this synthetic virtual coworker, as opposed to when they collaborated with um, a tool like the ordinary chat GPT. And more importantly, also that changes the entire perspectives and dynamics of your real human coworkers. If you are succeeding in the workplace, promoting, work that wasn't really created by you as your own, then people don't feel happy in the workplace. And they feel that they're being threatened by this technology. And it's logical that that happens, right? Because if you're using tools, you're not going to give credit to them. If you use a calculator to do some of your work, you're not going to thank your calculator. But when we started having people work with digital coworkers, then they started to give credit to them for the work that did, which of course influences the perceptions of, people within your organization who are also um, yeah, potentially competing with you or working with you on various projects. Long story short, we need to rethink these technologies. We need to take it a little bit slower. Um, but it should be obvious that there's a lot of potential to enhance the way we work, our well-being, to cut down. I think that's also very important, to cut down the amount of hours that we're working and just accept that perhaps with this technology, we can move towards 25-hour work weeks.
Yeah. Well, that was a really complicated question, and I really appreciate sharing your thoughts and giving us all kind of some insight into what the things are for those of us that are interested in people and work, what the things are that we should be sensitive to as we what's going on in the world and the research that's going on related to that. And I mentioned at the beginning that we are having this wonderful chat because you're going to be giving a webcast lecture in 2 weeks. So can you give us a preview of your upcoming webcast lecture?
Yes. So a quick preview. I want the lecture to be accessible for everyone. I'm not going to share anything technically complicated or provide codes or anything like that. I want to, first of all, really ensure that it's accessible. That's always my goal, also for the open verse, to allow everyone, even if they have no technical background, to use these tools and to innovate their research methods. So I'm going to start by giving a little bit of background on virtual reality. Of course, share how it is a beneficial research method, how it has been used in the past, a little bit of the history, especially within the field of management. I'll talk about our publication in organizational research methods, simulating virtual organizations. I will demonstrate why VR in many aspects is a superior research method compared to more traditional online experiment methods. I'll share how people can get started using this research method, some things to think about, also the downsides of it. Of course, I'll nuance it. Of course, again, I'm a big fan of virtual reality, but it isn't always the solution. So I'll try and share a little bit, depending on like your people's backgrounds, research questions, etc., on how it can be beneficial for them, or when perhaps it might not be. And I will end also by talking about AI, obviously, and synthetic field studies specifically, which are referred to as virtual reality studies, in which we simulate not just the environment, but also the organizational actors, and how people can also start diving into this kind of research method, and making it clear, that this could potentially be a real contender for real field studies. And it's not per se a competition. They both have their time and place. But I'm really, I have a certain vision that I want to share with people on how this could become another research method that scholars can add to their arsenal. And then, most importantly, I would invite people to check out the Openverse and to see how all the scholars that are present within the Openverse and all the assets that we have, how they can start using that for their own research methods in the very near future.
Okay, that will be on Friday, November the 14th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, US. So middle of the afternoon for our friends and supporters in Europe. Anand van Zelderen from the business at Schema, the Schema Business School. Thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts, and we're very much looking forward to your webcast in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.